Alexandrian tradition of witchcraft, and this is a weekly live podcast or vlog that we do. If you're watching us through Facebook, you can please like. If you're watching us through YouTube, subscribe to Hex Education, which is the platform that we broadcast through. Today's episode is called The Triple Goddess. We're going to be delving into the myth, the reality, and I think a little bit of the pendulum swing between when this was one of the most revered archetypes in the contemporary revival of witchcraft to sort of the backlash against it. And I think we're going to examine that and a lot of other things. But we're all glad that you're here. And again, please remember, like, subscribe, Hex Education. I believe Elie actually made our icebreaker this time. We're a little scared. I'm a little nervous.
It's an adorable icebreaker.
No, ma'am.
And this is season 4, episode 3.
Yes.
Of Covendom. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for allowing we three, to be here and just have such a good time together. So this week's topic was the triple fold goddess. And there's really a lot of great stuff to read about it, and I dug through my bookshelves, and I started thinking about it last week, so I'd be prepared with my ideas and with proper research. And I began looking at goddesses from around the world, and I knew that I had to create the icebreaker game. So all of a sudden, I said, I've got it.
She had it. It was just...
I have a feeling
I had a button, it didn't work.
I think I know what you're going to do.
I didn't get a button. So I got a symbol or an idea for each goddess, and I want you guys to guess. I'm going to tell you the symbol, and I want you guys to guess the goddess.
Okay.
The Grail.
Morgan Le Fay.
Cutting close. In the water.
The Lady of the Lake.
Yes!
Lady of the Lake. Okay.
Okay. You're going to get this one for sure. The bow and arrow.
Artemis.
Diana.
Yes, both. Diana and Artemis.
Both, yeah.
The owl.
Athena.
Laduith.
Yes, both. The torch.
Hecate.
The dog and the key.
Hecate.
Hecate.
Ooh, your favorite. Levi. Garland of skulls.
Kali.
Crow or raven.
Morgan. Morgu.
This one's probably not one that we're going to get that easily, but I was trying to go all around the pantheons. She turns herself into a giant sea dragon to defeat the god that she's fighting.
Tiamat?
Yes!
Oh, I get Tiamat.
Yeah, Tiamat.
Can't remember the name of the god, though.
Okay. Norse idea, the falcon. She shifts into the
Freya?
falcon. Or...
Frigg.
Okay.
And Freya's attributed to the falcon a lot, too, but Frigg's a little older with that. Oh, love it. The white feather.
The white... Mott.
Yes.
Mea. I don't know.
On her shield is etched the Medusa head.
Athena, yeah.
No.
Yes.
The Roman version is
Minerva. Because
And
Athena
she
is the
has
breastplate.
Yes, and she has the shield.
Okay, tricky, because Athena's the breastplate, Minerva's the shield.
The well.
Coventina.
Who's at the...
Brigid.
Brigid,
Think of Ireland.
yeah.
Brigid at the well, yeah.
On her sides, flanked, are by 2 lions.
Magna Mater?
Ishtar.
Yes.
Ishtar.
Inanna.
Inanna.
Okay, I wrote a lot of them because it's so much fun. So we're doing it quickly. All right, the threads of fate.
The Fates.
The Weird.
The Moray?
Starts with an N.
The Norns.
The Norns.
yeah.
Now, and this whole chapter on those triumvirate sisters, cousins, or women that work together. That's one of the themes we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah.
She guards the temple pylon, and her name means Lady of the Temple.
Hestia.
Nephthys.
Oh.
Nephthys.
Oh. Yes.
Cowhorns.
Hathor.
Yes.
Hathor. Yeah.
Wings.
Isis.
Staff of wheat.
Demeter.
Or
Persephone.
Cybele.
or Ceres.
Yeah.
She rules the home hearth.
Brigid.
Hestia.
Hestia's Brigid would probably be counted as that.
I would
too.
count.
Vesta, Hestia. Oh, I love this. This is in the oldest stories about this goddess. She carries a spear and wears a goat skin cloak.
Oh, I know this. I can't take it.
She's married to someone really famous.
A goat skin cloak and a spear.
Mm-hmm. And she's in this guise, she's the warrior, and she is married to Zeus.
Hera?
Oh, Hera?
Juno.
Juno, the Roman.
Well, that would be Jupiter, not Zeus.
Sorry, Jupiter. The magical cauldron.
Caradwen.
The mare.
Epona.
Epona.
Peacock.
Hera.
the night sky.
Nuit.
Or
Oh God. I know.
Nyx.
Nyx. Thank you.
Okay,
I couldn't think of it.
wasn't that fun?
Yes,
Yes,
very
that was
fun.
actually
Very
good. Good
very
job.
good.
Okay,
And,
good
and people were, I see all your comments online that you liked it. So Elie, you got a lot of shout outs for that.
Yeah.
And people were playing along and it was
For
very
some
cool.
of those, there's more than one answer, obviously, but yeah.
There are.
Yeah,
and that
super
just
fun
shows
game. Yeah.
there's so much crossover.
Got our brains working.
It did. The symbols
And
of
there's so much
goddess
crossover
worship.
in mythology, which is a great intro to the triple goddess, which has so much crossover in mythology, and as it grows through the centuries, how we've adapted to the idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do I get to do my intro first?
Yes,
since you guys
please.
did? I'll try to make it limited because I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. So I was a little concerned about tonight's topic, just not because I don't think it's important. I think it's a great topic, and sometimes I think when you've been around for a while, certain topics just become somewhat of a bore in your mind, you know? So I thought, well, how much do we have to say about this? But I actually did put a section of it in my book, Initiation to Witchcraft,
Available
on
through
iTunes.
Warlock Press.
So I just like the iTunes thing. You know, it is a very important subject, and I'd say one of the things that I'd want to say most about it is that one of my perspectives that I've written about and talked about when it comes to modern witchcraft and our worship of the gods is it's all well and good to research the past, to read all the mythologies we can, to go visit the sacred sites, to study their symbols. I mean, we love doing that, and that's crucially important. But I think sometimes there is a mistake made by some magical individuals that they fail to realize what's happening now matters too. You know, so you have certain things like, you know, a great conversation could be about the god Pan and about how at one point he was very obscure and, you know, whether or not he was ever seen cosmic. And I don't want to derail, but, you know, you'll have some academics say, oh, he was never cosmic. And somebody else will point out, well, in Alexandria he was. You know, and you'll get all these academics trying to prove how much they know or don't know about Pan in order to establish that the way he's being worshipped now is incorrect. And I find that to be very strange and backwards. You know, I think Pan may be more exciting now than he ever was. You know, I think the same thing about the goddess Hecate. I think at one point in time she was somewhat obscure compared to other Greek gods. And now she's worshipped in Brazil.
Yeah.
You know, so I think
Truly global.
might
World
be
fame,
more
world fame.
yeah, might be on her biggest tour ever, you know, her biggest comeback tour ever. So I think it's well and good to understand those things. So when I think about the triple full goddess, the same thing comes to mind. You have all these people who go to great lengths to say the maiden, mother, and crone are a modern construct. And in a way, they're right. Though tonight we'll be referencing probably certain gods and goddesses that show that is true. You know, the first one that I referenced was a myth that I found while I was writing my book about the goddess Isis. And I don't know the myth verbatim, but basically she starts out, she's trying to help Horus get his rightful kingship, and there's going to be a big tribunal of the gods, and Set tries to prevent Isis from getting there. So he's got all these traps set up to basically have her, you know, detained. So in order to sneak past, she first starts out as a young maiden. She takes the guise of a young maiden and sneaks past, gets on the boat through this guise, and then for some reason, then she's got to turn into an old woman. And it literally says that she's a hag. You know, she turns into a hag to escape the next plight. And eventually shows up to the tribunal and resumes her form as what? The mother of the king. So in that one of the oldest mythologies in the world, you have this goddess who literally takes the form of a maiden, mother, and crone. You know, and at that point when that mythology had come into swing, she was surely identified with the moon. So in modern witchcraft, we see the triple full goddess as the waxing full and waning moon. And the phrases maiden, mother, crone certainly have been coined in the modern age, but who cares?
I mean,
why is that a problem? You know, so the goddess is given modern titles, that there are modern ways of expressing things. I don't see why that's an issue. You know, we're not doing the exact same things that the people in the past were doing. We enshrine those ideas and often misunderstand them anyway. And then there's the key thing is, what if they did and we just don't know about it? More has been lost than what we remember. More has been lost than what has been recorded. So it's very strange to me to see a modern practitioner stamping their feet about the maiden, mother, and crone. You know, that's a modern thing.
Yeah, we're not reconstructionists.
You know, I will say in craft, you know, originally the goddess was just eternally young, you know, and that was the way she was expressed. It was more later, and I do think somewhat Alexandrians that put forward the maiden, mother, crone. And then the women's movement took off with it, as well as other pagan groups and witchcraft groups, you know. I'm not aware of Gardnerian expressing it, but off the top of my head, but who knows? You know, it is what it is. But it's a later expression for sure. And, you know, tonight we could talk about some of the possible historic sources for it, as well as modern sources, like this book Levi's holding here.
Yes.
This book
Robert
and
Graves.
Aleister Crowley are both sort of quoted as being progenitors of this dual goddess, where the goddess is both young and then old, this kind of idea, but there's nothing new under the sun. You know, there's an old Scottish myth of Brigid being kidnapped by Cailleach, and Brigid's a maiden in this story, and she's kidnapped by Cailleach, who is one of the few goddesses who always is a hag. You know, she's one of the few that is actually described that way. Most goddesses aren't, but she kidnaps the maiden and brings them into the underworld. It's like a Hades thing. And then Angus, I think it's Angus McCog, might just be Angus, I can't remember, sort of love god, rescues her and brings her up into the world, and she becomes his queen. So in that weird story, you still have this weird story of a maiden going into the underworld, being taken by the crone, and then when she's rescued through love, she becomes the queen and probably eventually the mother, right? So I'm not going to steal all the mythological examples, you know, leave some room because there's only so many, right?
Yeah.
But the triple full goddess to me is simply an expression of the waxing full and waning moon. And I don't overly use the title Maiden, Mother, Crone in my own personal verbiage anymore, but I don't object to it either. It doesn't bother me. You know, I think where it got weird was when you had these women movements that have nothing to do with witchcraft, having croning ceremonies and things like that. It started taking on a stronger personification of the aging process and moved further away from the moon, you know. And when I was, you know, little bit younger than I am, there was these moon lodges that were going around. Don't know if they still exist, but that was a big thing, and people confused them with witchcraft. It wasn't witchcraft. It was a mystery cult that often blended Native American stuff with it, and they often used Native American icons, but they used that Maiden, Mother, Crone. And so I think the blending between that terminology and general paganism started to occur, and there's been sort of a separation from the craft and that, because, you know, really the craft, we're just talking about the moon, you know.
Just we got our things.
And really,
were the moon lodges men and women, or
women only?
Okay.
Women only.
I didn't know about them, but that makes a lot of sense with all the feminism.
Whoever wants to go next.
So Elie, what did you want to say, just sort of as a little bit of an intro, not, you know, like Brian said, not giving it all away, but about the triple goddess?
I took a little bit different approach. I took it from an artistic viewpoint.
Very nice.
Where I looked at the periods, classicism and romanticism.
And, you know, not to interrupt, people fail to always look at the art.
Right.
I've often thought of that, and it's such an important record of our history. Continue.
Right. So in thinking about what we had said last week was that Robert Graves, who wrote and published The White Goddess in 1948, was coming out of a really powerful literary tradition. He influenced, we said, and this is pretty commonly written about, the triple goddess and the goddess in general, and the goddess movement that we've all witnessed from, you know, the late 40s to today, where she was really brought back into the discussion in, of course, paganism and witchcraft particularly. So I wanted to see what else was being published. What would he have read? What is the milieu around Robert Graves' time period, and what comes right before him and what comes during his time? Because what I had on my mind were these great paintings of the Greek gods and goddesses out in nature, full glory oil paintings of the mythology stories. And at certain time periods, these were very famous, these were very protocol paintings. Every wealthy family in Western Europe had
a Diana.
You know, So I want to I'll be brief about it, but here's where I'm coming from. Classicism as an art and literary movement is, and neoclassicism, 1790s up until today. Classicism's interest is in ancient Greece and Rome, the Age of Enlightenment, and the Italian Renaissance painting. So the Age of Enlightenment's coming out of medieval Italy, Renaissance Italy, 1500s, 1600s, Italian Renaissance paintings, 1800s. That's where we get those gorgeous mythological scenes. And neoclassicism in writing, defined by a great interest in ancient Greece and Rome. And we have that in the public art, in the libraries, in the museum art, and that's what the population was looking at stylistically. In the 1800s, we move to Romanticism, okay, which is what influenced, I got one more piece of paper. Oh my God.
I love the notes. Elie came like...
Romanticism, 1790 to 1850. This movement was defined by emotion, individualism, glorification of the past, and glorification of nature, but much more in the medieval time period than ancient Greece and Rome. So we had this sort of movement in history in the Romantic period, and a lot of what was published that was used in early witchcraft and pagan research was coming out of late Romanticism.
I think it could really all derive from goddess orgies.
That's what Brian thinks.
So back to the goddess orgies.
Pan and all those nymphs.
So 1890 to 1922, there were several versions of The Golden Bough by Sir James Fraser published, focusing on matriarchal religions and things pre-Judaism in Wales and Ireland, the UK, and the Western world, and the White Goddess. So Fraser was a prime source for Robert Graves. The White Goddess, published in 1948. Robert Graves also published the Greek myths. And even though he wasn't an academic mythologist, he was a poet and literature writer. This was his field of reading. So his published work, which is a lot. I didn't know he lived till he was 90.
And he also wrote I, Claudius.
He did.
People forget he was a novelist.
And
he wrote I, Claudius, and Claudius the God.
I, Claudius. I didn't know that till today. Didn't we all watch that on PBS and just love the Claudius series? So that was in the public view, White Goddess in 1948. Okay, and then I'm gonna stop, and we can talk about ancient Rome and Greece. I have a little bit of information about that. I have a little bit of information about Etruscan Roman remains, which is another Leyland publication. It was published before Aradia. There's a lot of great Italian goddess stories in here.
And
it's
these
overlooked.
are all the people that influenced Graves.
Overlooked, but this is some of the material that somebody might have had on their bookshelf or going to the library who wanted to research ancient goddesses, but in a version that was written recently, late 1700s, 1800s, late 1800s. So, and a great article on Wikipedia, which I gave $10.50 to today so they could stay alive, on the triple goddess, okay, on the triple goddess and its history through writing. And Robert Graves is, primary in this article, but I think it's really interesting to see how it moves from ancient times, where we have the fates, the Norns, the charities. They were weavers of time. They were responsible for the development of human life from birth to death, and they were looked at as three people, younger, middle-aged, and older. And then that was combined with the idea of the moon phases, originally written about by Porphyry in the 6th century, a Greek Neoplatonist. Wasn't he Greek? Porphyry, or he was Greek. Else?
He wrote in Greek, but he wasn't from Greece itself. Yeah, I don't think.
Levi, where do you think the concept of trinities comes from?
Of trinities? The moon.
No, before in cultures.
But Porphyry writes about it and
just
says
trinities outside of the moon.
New moon.
Yeah, no, I think for us
moon,
it's
full moon.
Yeah.
And that those got combined
Egypt
in
was
the Romantic
with
period.
The Egyptians were obsessed with trinities.
Obsessed with trinities. Every god was a trinity.
I was going to say that I think, what Elie's pointing at here is there's two important things to take out of a lot of what, we look at historically. Number one is gods often come in threes. And this is a universal thing. In Taoism, you have the three pure ones. In Hinduism, you have the Tridevi, like Shiva and Vishnu and Brahma, creator.
Now you have Brian, Elie, and Levi.
Brian, Elie, and Levi, triplicate divinity. You have the Trinity in Christianity. You have, it's a lot. The three supernals in Kabbalah, you know,
Yes.
and that's the number one thing is like triplicities are very common. And in Egypt, they were obsessed with them. You know, there was this concept of a triplicity for
Just
each
shows
city.
it's from the dawn of
Carl
human
Jung
being.
says that our subconscious creates things in threes.
Yeah.
There's a whole practice log on Carl Jung's work where you're working with 3 archetypes. So
Yes.
it's used today in modern
The other thing that Elie
psychoanalysis.
brought up that I think is very important is the influence of Romanticism on paganism and witchcraft. They were all reading the Romantics. And
Art too. That's
Yes.
a huge thing.
And seeing the paintings.
The
That's-
opera
that's
of
right.
Wagner
That's right. That's
and
right. That's
the
right.
You know, when
poets
people
and
couldn't
Yeats
read and
and
write,
whatnot.
they could still look at the art.
Here's the artists of the Romantic period: Francisca Goya, William
Oh, I
Blake,
love Goya.
Goya Penitents
William
and
Blake,
Witches.
John Constable, John Williams Waterhouse,
Waterhouse painted Morgan Le Fay and all that.
J.M.W. Turner, Eugene Delacroix, and these were all those romantic.
Or like John Collier's painting of Lilith, the snake around her. They were really into pagan themes.
And
like
those
very
were
into it.
what would be in the newspaper or were showing.
It's
at
also
the
what
biggest,
recorded our history
you know,
during
the
the
biggest
Dark
art
Ages
shows at the
in a
time.
lot of ways. You know?
And I think the other thing
That's how
I'll
we
say
know
is-
Gerald Gardner didn't really create nudity in witchcraft.
No,
Right,
there's
right.
tons of nude
Right.
witches. But one of the things I think is the most important thing about this show is, and it's something I wanted to bring up, is Brian has talked about this on the show a lot too. There are these weird counter movements that happen in craft and in general witchcraft and paganism where we all believe one thing, and then you get a lot of brownie points for tearing it down. So this idea that witchcraft is an ancient religion, and then it just became de rigueur to sort of destroy that idea. Or the goddess is a triple-fold goddess. And then you had this massive, almost aggressive academic voice, even within craft and paganism, that said, no, that's all made up. There were
If
no...
you're not really practicing now, doesn't matter.
Exactly. And what I don't understand, and Brian is hitting something very important here, this is not a reconstructionist religion.
Right.
We are
In
not
no way.
trying
I mean,
to...
don't get us wrong, we all love it, right?
I
We
love
all love
history.
history and all that, but yeah.
But I'm not trying to reconstruct the Celtic religion or the Greek religion. And movements that have done that are, to be really frank with you, all a little wonky.
I was going to say, have you found anything that's been successful in the
No.
Reconstructionist
because you can't,
movements?
you can't
know
do it,
right?
really. Yeah.
Right.
And this idea also that the triple goddess is not a thing in history is utterly ridiculous. My favorite example, because I like to use this example because everybody knows about the Morrigan, everybody knows about Hecate with the 3 images of her, the Trivia, Diana Trivia. Hera had a mystery cult in Greece, and the historical references, you can go to the Theoi website, which is very popular, and you can find the actual historical linked references. She had a cult, a mystery cult for women, where they worshipped her in the beginning of the year as Hera Parthenos, Hera the Virgin. And then she was married to Zeus in a secret ritual, and she became Hera Zygia, Hera the married woman, Hera the conjugal Hera. And then, in the dark of the year, they would veil her statues, and they called her Hera Chere, which is hard to translate, but either means Hera the divorced woman or Hera the widow. And then they would renew her virginity in secret rites that only women could attend every year.
Queen of Swords becomes Queen of Cups.
Yes, so it's
Could-
like this idea that it didn't exist in history is nonsense.
Could I add 2 more examples just
Yeah.
historically? In the 6th century, I love this, Levi. In the late 6th century Rome, Diana was Diva Triformis.
Yeah,
The
three-formed
unity of
goddess.
the divine huntress, the moon goddess, and the goddess of the netherworld, Hecate. So Diana had the 3 forms in the 6th century Rome.
Diana on earth, in heaven, Selene,
Yes.
in
Hecate.
hell.
Yes.
Yeah, Hecate in
She
the
was
underworld.
Luna in the lunar world, and Diana in the earth plane, and
That too,
Prosperina in hell.
Persephone, yeah.
And one other story was when Demeter went to try to get Persephone out from the underworld. She couldn't achieve that for 12 months out of the year. She had to give up that her daughter would be underground with Hades for certain parts of the year. She appealed to Hecate, who said, "I'll go down with her and stay
Yeah.
in the winter."
Hecate gets woven into
So
the
she,
Which
Ocean
is
she
City.
kind
lives
of like
with,
the
Mythos.
she lives
Italian
with the Virgin.
story.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And then the other theory, older on this triple goddess, is the 3, the matris, the matrone,
The mothers, the 3
The
mothers.
You
three
know,
mothers and
Means
and
mothers.
then the
Yeah,
old
Gaulish
ones too. So
Rome.
there's a
Three
lot
mothers.
of there's
It's
a
also
lot of
Celtic,
ancient,
Celtic Rome, the
Yeah.
3
yeah,
mothers.
and there's a lot
yeah.
of ancient stories about the threefold goddess. It's not
Yeah, it's
just
ridiculous to
tons.
say that they're not.
Tons. Now, threefold
A
goddess
big
and the
thing.
moon is a little bit. you start breaking it down a little bit more, Hecate was one, but she just named Selena and Diana is another one.
And I want to say
Isis is one.
that whoever, Jane, and I don't know this, I
Who
just
else
read
do we
this
have?
today.
It's for sure the moon.
Jane Helen Harrison put forth the idea that the triple-fold goddess was related to the moon phases. And this was in, I don't know what time she did it, but Ronald Hutton's quotes, she just doesn't have the academic material to really say that was ancient.
But
I don't think it was ancient in those words.
Right.
You know, but then again, you know, I could refute him right there with the story of Isis. You know, a lot of these, so a lot of the very modern, like academics on witchcraft within the 90s forward, erased Egypt from the equation.
they really
You
did.
know, and so, which is funny because you get that now. You know, with certain people will come up with things and say, oh, you know, the horn of God never did this. And you're like, well, Osiris. Just like, you know, and they're like, oh, just didn't think about him. So, you know, yeah, we don't, obviously.
And
it's a
many
story of
Egyptian
humanity.
deities have the horn.
Yeah, lots of
hat.
gods have horns.
They do,
but
including
moon
Isis.
goddesses, you know, there are several historical threefold ones. And then there's even more threefold goddesses that were not the moon.
Oh.
You know, but yeah, straight up, full on those words, maiden, mother, and crone, I do believe that's a modern title. But I don't see anything wrong with it.
And I think it's people get
It's
caught
not
up.
modern now. It's modern from probably the same time the witchcraft revivals.
1920,
Yeah.
1930.
Yes,
And
and
what
older than
Brian-
the witchcraft
and the Romantic
revival,
rite.
really. Yeah.
What Brian brought up about the whole thing about becoming obsessed
Over
with
100
it
years
as
old.
a story of aging, I think is incorrect. I think what it is three aspects of the
Yes.
goddess as youthful and vibrant, maternal and
Correct.
queenly, and dark, which really was
Dark, not
in
old.
Neoplatonism, in the Neoplatonic philosophers, they really do use that as sort of Selene is the celestial goddess. Diana is our earthly
Nature,
form,
yeah.
nature,
The hunter.
what it's like to be in physical reality. And Hecate was the darker aspect of life, which was death and, you know,
But you
initiation.
can very
Beyond the
easily
veil. Beyond the
mirror
veil.
that to Maiden Mother Crone. I think what people get hung up on, and here's the misogyny coming up again, is the fact that you've got this aging process going on.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really the challenge because that's the modern thing. And it is sort of true, unfortunately. There aren't a lot of images of crone hag gods. There are some. You know, we've got it with Cailleach. There's the Italian one, Baba, whatever her name
Baba
is.
Yaga. That's
Baba
Russian.
The Russian one, yeah.
There's an Italian one too. I can't think what it's called right now. They do exist. Starving Mary.
Well, the old witch in the woods.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
medieval,
The Mother
the old
Dolorosa.
witch in the woods
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
old
Exists.
widow, right? And she was the hag, and she was out
One of
there
my
partly
favorites.
crippled, eating toads.
The maiden who guards the wells, the mother who gives life, and the apple woman who takes life back. You know, so it is in our mythologies, but yeah, it's like they just are so focused on trying to prove that the goddess was never an old lady.
But I think
You know, that you have to kind of wonder, like, why that's so important to them.
I think
You know?
that approach, the most important approach is the goddess as young, powerful, and hope-filled. The goddess as enthroned, and the goddess as wise and understanding and accepting of death, right? Those are all what those triplicate forms really are teaching you. And it's a very important lesson. And a lot of goddesses have this. I mean, even if you look at the Morrigan, she's both in love with, you know, Cuchulainn or whoever, but she's also, you know, the great carrion crow that is the prophetess of doom. You
Picking
know,
over the battlefield.
exactly. So it's both.
So
How do we?
one of my favorite ones that people forget often, it's called the 5 Alphas, and it's the 5 A gods of Greece. So you have Ares and Apollo, and then you have Artemis, Aphrodite, and Athena. So there you've got another triple-fold thing going on. And it's very clear, you know, Artemis is the virgin huntress in Greek mythology. Aphrodite is clearly not a virgin.
She is
I
not.
am not a virgin.
She is not
And
a virgin.
Athena's known for wisdom. So although Athena's certainly not depicted as old, you've got this, you know...
She's the battlefield, though. She can handle death.
Yes,
She can kill
you've got
people.
this virgin
Yeah.
nature thing going on. You've got
Because
this
the virgin
love
doesn't
mother
kill
thing
very
going
well.
on. And you've got the wisdom thing. So you've got purity, chastity, sexuality, and wisdom. You know,
Yeah.
it's a different aspect of it. But we don't know that it didn't have lunar origins at one point in time.
It's also like,
By the way, the 5 alphas is also a pentagram.
It's also 100% important to remember that, like,
I don't know who invented that.
I mean,
I have
our
no
life
idea.
really is 3 stages, though. You know, and so, like, life does seem to happen in a lot of triplicities. And the nuclear family is a triplicity.
Right. Mother,
Right.
father, child.
Yeah, father, mother, and children, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of triplicities in our actual lived lives, you know, and then there's planting, harvest, cold. You know, everything seems to follow that pattern. So it's natural. We're just mirroring nature. It's not something that's out of left field that was invented for some sort of weird
No,
psychological
I mean-
reason.
Even neutron, electron, proton. It's pretty basic.
Everything's...
There is.
Hey, I want to, wait, I forgot what I was going to ask. Crap, I don't know.
There is proof
Two
that
things.
in
The
some
first one I
old
forgot.
tribal societies, the oldest woman was really revered because she had lived so long and had so many children. So at one point in time, there was an idea, and I wish I, could pinpoint the culture, that there was a study in this culture that they saw the old woman, the vision of the old woman, as being more of a fertility image because she'd had so many children.
The midwife. The
Yeah.
goddess as the midwife,
Yeah.
right?
Stirring the cauldron.
Yeah, you know, so
She knew
that's
all
a big
the,
thing.
She knew all the rules, and she knew how life worked, and she had all
Well, and
these
you're right,
babies.
she'd lived that long.
Yeah.
She
And
had to have been wise.
we did carry
So I don't
that.
think there's anything wrong with revering the image of it, and I think it's sort of sad that people have such a problem with it.
Like,
Though I do agree in modern craft and in antiquity, often the goddess was seen as eternally beautiful because she was. But I love the stories where she could change. What is it?
A skill, I was just about to
Well,
say.
Dorian actually
shape-shifting,
did say in her
shape-shifting.
poem, sorry, I was trying to say, Dorian also did a lot of pagan things later on, but, she is youthful or old as she pleases, she sails the torn clouds in her barge, the bright silver lady of midnight, the crone who weaves spells in the dark.
yeah.
So, yes, wasn't all our fault.
But it is also this concept of, like I said, that wisdom, not necessarily just age, because, like, for example, the word in French for midwife is sage-femme, which literally means wise woman, historically. And I think that is what a lot of crone imagery is really about. It's about the goddess having experienced. It's Ishtar after she's lost the lover. It's Hera after she's dealt with Zeus. It's I have experienced the world. I am this treasure trove of knowledge, as opposed to just being youthful and beautiful.
And years.
You don't even exist to me.
Is that the button you wanted?
Years
No,
of
I was going
dealing
for-
with Zeus.
So I do want to plug in the phone, because I don't know
Yes.
if we did. So if you guys don't start calling us, we'll take the
and
privilege away.
Here's my 2 big
So,
questions.
well, let me finish the phone thing.
Blessed be.
So, if you'd like to call in, the number's on the screen, assumedly. So, 309 Goddess, you can call, and I don't know if you plugged this or not, I don't remember.
I did.
You can call with any questions on tonight's subject or anything to do with Alexandrian witchcraft or witchcraft in general. We'd be happy to answer. We ask that you prepare 1 or 2 questions, and we'll all try to give you our take on it. But anyway, be brave. It's a call-in show. If no one calls in, then there's no one brave listening.
Oh,
So,
be brave. Be brave.
or you don't have any questions. We get bored of listening to ourselves, Anyway, sorry. Levi.
Hit or miss.
Here, can I say my 2 questions? May
Yes.
I say my 2
Please
questions?
do.
Then we can have callers call in about my 2 questions. First,
Or whatever questions they want to ask.
whatever questions
Yeah.
you want to ask. I didn't get to this far in my work this week, Levi, but think about the Tree of Life and the Sephira.
Okay.
What are the goddesses for the 10 spheres?
Mm-hmm.
And how does the triple goddess show up in that arrangement? Like
Yeah.
Bina, we know, is Saturn. Chokmah, Bina, is Saturn. Chokmah is the zodiac, and Keter is the infinite.
Imperium,
You know,
the outer.
world of stars. So we've got Bina as a solid
Mount
Saturn,
Truth,
and
Yesod.
then yes. So where's the three
I think this is something I
folds
work-
set into there, and how do we define
Yeah.
them? Just kabbalistically, I thought that was an interesting.
I think it's
thing.
something
No,
I-
it is.
I didn't do it
Yeah.
at home, but I could ask.
I
We
work
could
a
really
lot
think about it.
with Kabbalah, and I think
They have
some of the
already
issues
been
is
done.
it's hyper masculine.
Probably.
There is the concept of the Shekinah. The spirit of God is feminine
Yeah.
in Hebrew.
The bride,
Yeah, Shekinah, the Holy Spirit is feminine.
and she's in Malkut.
The Paraclete
right?
in Christianity. Sometimes she's in the whole tree.
Yes, yes, she is.
She's married constantly in the tree.
So no one has any questions because the show's boring.
Here's
So
my-
judgmental.
Here's my other question, and we can answer both of these while we're talking to you guys. My other question was, how does the threefold goddess show up in Alexandrian witchcraft? That's what we really need to be looking at, and what I would like to see is how we Well, how we identify it through the year, how we philosophically understand it, and applications for us.
Well, obviously we're not going to teach the stuff
No.
that's not
Not
public, but
Not
she
from mouth
exists.
to ear.
She exists, and it's a reference to the moon. That's the thing. In some ways it can be referenced in the seasons as well, but it's just a symbol for transformation of the divine feminine, either in a lunar cycle or in a seasonal cycle. So we don't, we predominantly just think of the goddess as eternal, right?
Yes, we do.
And I think it's kind of a later practice, meaning something that developed more in the 70s and 80s than the 50s and the 60s, that it started becoming a label. But I don't think it was ever a big deal like it is with some groups today.
Right.
I don't think it was overly emphasized.
Right. Well, we flow through our Sabbaths and our year with elegance. I think real elegance in telling the stories of the divine couple.
It's there, but we don't make a huge deal out of it.
We don't seem to separate her as much age-wise.
No, when we talk about the moon, we say waxing moon, full moon,
waning
moon, and we know what we're saying, and we know it's the goddess. But I think it became more of I think it's bigger in the other forms of witchcraft and in general paganism than it ever was with us. Okay. But, yes, the Gardnerians and the Alexandrians to some extent did sort of start that message, but like so many messages, where it goes, where it goes. It's like those owls from Harry Potter world, Sometimes they send the wrong letters.
Alex has a good question, and we do have a call, but while it's screening, I'm going to say one thing, which is, I think part of the reason to have a tri-formed goddess, Diana Triformis, Hecate Triformis, is to show the goddess as a totality, right? It makes the goddess seem like this larger-than-life universal thing. It's similar to the way it happens in Hinduism,
Don't say
right?
this.
Patricia Crowther.
Please don't.
No, Alex had a good question before, and this, because I've got a call that is screening, but is there a god equivalent to the triple goddess or a multi-form of the horned god?
There's no triple-fold horned god. The horned god was usually seen as dual. So just like the 5 alphas I was talking about earlier, which is a Greek thought, which I don't even know if it's really Greek off the top of my head, honestly, because I don't know where the origins come from. But it obviously is real, right? So you've got the 3 we talked about, and then you've got Apollo, and you've got Ares. If you're looking at these as aspects of gods, you've got, the hunting god, who is, you've got the war god, right? What is war? Death, destruction, blah, 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 blah. He certainly in that regards would cover hunting too. Whereas Apollo is, would have been more fertility, life, healing, rejuvenation. So you've got this oak and holly king thing going on, which the Ferrars really put out there. I was going
to say, they did that really.
They did. That, right? It comes from folklore. You've got the robin and the wren, you've got the red dragon and the white dragon, and you've got the oak and the holly and lots of other ideas of that. But really, it's the Lord of death and resurrection. So he's dual, horns. So he's dual. So he's the
a triple god.
But the Oak and Holly King are not in the Book of Shadows.
No.
That was a later discussion, mythological.
No, what it was is, they took folklore.
Yes,
they took folklore and they emphasized it. Yes.
But think about it. You have a triple goddess and a dual god.
Yeah, that's
5.
That's what it was. The 5 alphas, which once again, at the top of my head, I don't know where that originates from.
Yeah, we don't use the Oak.
Somebody could have made it up. I don't know.
But it comes from the Ferrars. We do have
It doesn't come from Ferrars. Oak and Holly King comes from mythology.
I just meant the popularization.
Yeah, I think there's lots of older stuff that have better things. What they did is they. I'm not going to get into that.
So we do have a caller, so I'm going to.
Yes.
Hi, is this Claire?
Hi, yes, this is Claire. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Claire, how are you?
Good. I'm calling in because Brian demanded it, so here I am.
I don't remember this.
Just now, a minute ago. Did I? When you were like, everybody has to call in.
From this now. I thought you meant personally. Like I was like, Claire, you better call.
No. In you put a general call out.
We love our phone calls. Thank you,
So what was
Claire.
your question, Claire?
My question is, I know how we love to relate things to the lunar calendar and festivals, So if we were going to think of the threefold goddess in terms of times of year, what would you characterize that as?
Well, that's something I prefer to teach you in private.
Okay.
But, it varies. What I will say is, so that we can answer the question, is that it really varies a little bit from, so if you think in terms of like, the maiden is obviously going to be associated probably with spring and, the youthful sort of thing, whereas the mother's going to be full of bounty and the crone's obviously going to be waning in the year. So if you were to think along the lines of the moon as waxing and full and waning, different traditions have come up with their way of looking at the earth, and it varies depending on what tradition you're in. We have our own sort of teachings, but, the important thing is it's like, it's not a big deal really. It's like the knowing of that is just knowing the waxing and the waning forces of the seasons, which inherently we all know anyway, right? Like, we don't really need to use an architect to describe that we know what winter means, right? Versus what summer means or what spring or fall means. So it's just that sort of articulate. Of course, in our line, we've got a way to articulate that, but I'm not going to share that with the general public. But it's really quite intuitive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, if I could add one thing, Claire, it's very emotional, because if the goddess is eternal, then your relationship to her is going to change based on your non-eternal self. So if I'm in the dead of winter and my family's starving and it's, and I'm scared and it's cold, then the goddess might honestly...
I banish that and remove it.
I know, I saw it. The goddess might come through as a little bit terrifying or a little bit dark. She might be that goddess who is, the one who holds back the harvest, challenges you. People forget this about some of the gods we worship. Artemis asks for a human sacrifice in the Iliad, Iphigenia, and we forget that.
He was asking for it.
They have these dark aspects to them, So, but if it's the spring and all my crops look beautiful and I'm in love with the village maiden, then the goddess probably comes off to me as like gorgeous and fragrant and wondrous,
Powerful.
It's like, it's
in the original Witchcraft, Alexandrian Gardnerian, there wasn't really an emphasis with Maiden Mother Crone. That's something we sort of developed in these archetypes and expressions as time went on. So it's not really like it's some sort of huge secret, but it is a mystery. How we say we don't have secrets, we have mysteries. So I don't want to shatter that little mystery for people, but I do think it's quite intuitive. Yeah. I think that you can kind of figure out,
And we certainly experience the goddess as a multifaceted person, right? Not just a static, cut out, flat pattern, but something that's evolving changing. And in the round.
Like nature, because she is nature.
We have that experience with the goddess.
There's a totality to it with that triple image that I think is useful.
So Claire, do you have another question?
Not right now, but I could call back in later.
Well, we love
Take
that
a
you
couple
called
shots
in.
and call back.
Yeah, that's what Brian's like.
Okay, I'll do that.
Blessed be. Thank you
Thank
for
you
calling,
guys.
Claire.
Blessed be.
We do have another one.
So Claire was brave.
It's still a good question. It's a good question. It's a
a very good question.
To think for yourself.
Yeah,
to think it through.
I wanted to answer it in a way that was saying, yes, I can answer the question, but also there's stuff I'm not going to tell them, but I'll tell you.
We also have some excellent. We do have a couple excellent questions in the comments.
If she doesn't already know, I have no idea, honestly.
I do want to grab some of these really great questions. There's a couple up there that I'm going to show you that I think are really good, but we do have another call.
Don't answer me.
Hi, is this Sapphire?
Hello? Yes, it is. It is Sapphire.
Hi,
how are you guys tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
Sapphire? Thank you.
I am cooking food, so I'm doing well.
Good. What was your question?
It was in regards to the Trinity. I heard you mention it when I was listening, but you said the triple gods, but there's also even the 3 points of contact and health and safety. So we could take it to the physical, mortal realm, I guess we could say as well. Mm-hmm. There's also the number 5, which
so what was your question?
Like this. Pardon?
Your question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sounds like you're telling us stuff.
What is your perspective on this? I'm trying to throw all my ideas and then say, hey, what do you guys think about these ideas?
Mm-hmm. You mean about it being in the physical world?
Yeah, like we can, okay. Maybe just focus more on the triple god aspect and how we can apply that to like the sage, brain farting.
It's very pagan-y sounding. We don't really do that.
Yeah, we don't really split the god into a triplicate in craft.
No, We don't have we don't have a triple
I think I heard
god.
it from the Druidic form, so that might be where I'm mixing things.
Well, that's reconstruction stuff going on.
Yeah, there was a movement that happened in Neo-Druidry and in some Neo-Pagan movements to mirror the triple goddess with a triple god. I think they call him something like the hunter,
fine,
the king,
yeah.
and the sage or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not part of our religion. Yeah,
It's
our,
very off of our brand, I guess you can say.
yeah, like our God is not expressed as a
It
triple.
would be like
fold
calling up a
deity.
Catholic and saying, "Could you tell us about the Trinity of Mary?" They're going to be like, "No, it doesn't exist." You know.
Yeah,
No, there was actually a story of the three Marys. I'm just not really familiar with it.
Yeah, but we don't tend to. Yeah, the God is not split into a
No,
triple for
the
us.
God for us, if we were going to split him up, he'd be dual, so it'd be two, not three, and it
So-
represents life and death.
Yeah, that's what
So,
I was going to say. The God of life.
There's
and the
not
God
really
of
a
death.
mirror for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Sorry for the misunderstanding.
But
Yeah,
it
But
probably,
three,
No
as far
problem.
as what you're saying, as far as three being significant throughout cultures, throughout the world, throughout our human minds, you're quite correct. It's universal. It's a universal, but it's a number. So all the basic numbers are going to have some sort of universal component. That's how mathematics is the only consistent language we have.
Yeah,
really,
but we
with
just don't tend to
nature.
do that for the.
and we define the goddess as eternal and non-dying in Alexandrian witchcraft, and we define the god as dying and being reborn, right?
Yeah.
So it is 2 for the god and 3 for the goddess. I think 3 because of the eternal nature. She doesn't really experience death the same way the god does.
Yeah. Does that clear it up?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
How would this relate then to sacred geometry, possibly? Or is that not something you dabble in either?
Well, that's what I was just saying. It's sort of sacred geometry. I mean, mathematics is just in nature. That's how we
Okay.
discovered it. So that's just inevitable. There's no escaping mathematics, is there?
No.
So, saying threes in life, threes in nature, threes in religion. Well, of course it is.
And the 2 and the 1. Yeah.
Of course it is. And so, of course, it's also in sacred geometry. I would relate more with sacred geometry because I actually hate math. So, but I love art. And so I can see symbols. Math in symbols to me works really well. And math is just an abstract mathematical process. It's like, then you're speaking a foreign language.
But
to
a
me.
number is a symbol.
But it does work. So yeah.
It is when you think of it that way.
But yeah, that was clearing up about the god and asking about numbers. But
So it just depends on your tradition, I suppose.
yeah,
They're not all. I think
Well, thank
that's,
you for your time.
Thank
of course.
you.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you, Sapphire.
One of the things that I always
Alright.
kind of putting. I think she might have had another question.
No, she said thank you for your time.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry if I cut you off. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
I hung up on
Two
her, so
questions.
that was
You
the
did
end of
hang
that.
up on her.
I don't think I did.
No, she was still talking to you. Yeah, he's very quick, you guys, on this.
I am
He loves
brutal.
this thing. So we do ask them for 2 questions to make sure if they join. So if you had another question, feel free to call back in. What we're doing on this show is representing predominantly witchcraft through the lens of Alexandrian witchcraft and Gardnerian witchcraft. The reason we say those two is because we're the same religion. Everything else that describes itself as witchcraft has great degrees of separation from us. And that's not to say they're good or bad, but we are not representing people who call themselves druids now. We're not representing people that call themselves pagans now. We know about these things. We are well studied in them. We know what they mean, but we don't practice them. That's not what we're talking about. However, on a subject like the triple-fold goddess, that's a perfect example of how a witchcraft concept, was brought into these other traditions. So you do have it flourishing in these other traditions. When you get things like druids creating a trinity, I almost think of that as a misogynistic backlash. We do not know what the druids actually believed.
No, very little.
We
Very
literally
little.
don't know that they didn't believe in a monotheistic goddess. We simply just don't know that. We know certain Celtic gods and goddesses. That doesn't mean anything. There are people nowadays that think that we don't really that the druids in a sense are almost an invention. That they may not have been exactly what we romanticize them to be.
Yeah.
And personally, my theory is that they were particularly Celtic mystery cults, whether it was one or a few, and they were Celtic initiates of whatever was going on in their magical world.
Practically no written information except what the Romans said about
Their
it.
enemies wrote everything about them.
Their enemies or their conquerors. Now, I trust the Romans a lot more than I trust the Christians, and the reason why I say that is the Romans have a pretty good record of, unless a cult was...
They wrote every sheet down.
Yeah, they had
every
a pretty
goat.
good record of accurately trying to record what they thought other religions were. And as long as they weren't enemies to the state, they didn't have a problem with them. That included if they were Roman.
And many Romans writing about the same topic, which was an opportunity to compare and contrast.
Yeah, to see a
at the time.
comparison.
It's what we
not
have.
just one person.
You know,
It was- it wasn't- it was a
90%
lot
of what
writing.
people think they
It's a lot
know
of
about
writing.
Druids is based completely on fantasy.
It's the Romanticism,
Yeah.
that era of
Yes.
Completely
like
unfancy.
druidic
Yes,
orders.
the ley
so,
lines,
yeah.
the
We
Stonehenge
don't
situation,
even know
the
what
tree,
they were worshipping.
forests.
No, we don't.
You
There's
know,
no.
we don't.
There's no legitimate.
But also
It could have
to
been a
say,
secret god that we've lost completely.
but also
We
to
have no
say,
idea. Or goddess.
in Reconstructionist religion, we're not commenting on its quality. We're just saying
We don't
that's
care.
what it is. That's what it is.
Same thing like when I was saying
Right.
earlier, it doesn't matter that the triple goddess as Maiden Mother Crone is a newer construct. I don't think it matters that modern Druidism is, like, we don't care. If it's working for people, blah, 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 blah. My point in the commentary is it's like, it doesn't mean it's us. Like, we're not the same
Right,
thing.
right.
No.
You know, Oswald was on the topic of fantasies earlier too. You know, I don't mind if people know it's modern and support it. I think it's problematic. I think Druids are kind of a thorn in my side in the sense that so many people believe in the fantasies.
that it was legitimately real.
Yeah, and I love the Druids. Don't get me
I
wrong.
mean, you will still see in
love
print
them.
things like the Druids built Stonehenge when that's not true.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
you'll
the whole
still
thing.
see that in print. And
Pre-Druidic.
it's pre-Druidic. But
Christian and
it's-
I were just talking
you still see
recently
it.
about the fact that academia has stopped, you know, the schools of anthropology and archaeology have stopped using witchcraft as a label for other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that you're not going to run across publications 10, 20 years ago that still did it.
Yep.
You know, so that may be, you know, something you read that you think is right. I mean, just unfortunately, that's how it is. So, you know, same thing. There's still people today who might read a book that says the Druids built Stonehenge and they believe it. There are people today that think the world is flat. There's like
That's
a
unfortunate.
movement of people that think the world is
Very
flat.
unfortunate.
No, there's a movement of people that don't think there were dinosaurs. You know, so it is what it is. So unfortunately, in the, you know, subcultures, that's true as well. However, once again, we're not here to represent those subcultures, and you know, but sometimes, yeah, it's crossover talk is going to happen.
Yeah. We do have another call.
We're not downing them. We just don't care about
These
them.
people listened to you when you said call in.
I love this.
Hi, is this Peggy?
Yes, it is. How y'all doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I love you guys. I just realized you were back on. So I'm a solitary practitioner of many, many decades. I don't want to tell you how old I am. I'm not old. Anyway, my question is, I don't know a whole lot about the goddess stuff. I mean, I've always subscribed to Mother Maiden Crone for the cycles of a woman, but I was just wondering, for somebody that doesn't know much about the goddesses, I do like Kuan Yin, by the way.
Okay.
I'm curious as to where to start to work with one.
Well, I have to take this because she said Kuan Yin, just for a second. The only reason why I was going to bandwagon. So there was a very beautiful, unfortunately you guys can look it up online now because it's been taken down. But in China, there was a very beautiful, gigantic statue of a triple-faced Kuan Yin. So she went around, and there were 3 of them, and they were all the same, much like Hecate. They were all young. They were the same. Probably, maybe they had different symbols, like, you know, that was often the case. There were a lot of triple goddesses that were just like triplets, you know, meant different things, but they were the same goddess. The message they were trying to send is this is all the same goddess, different aspects. I don't know why she was triple, because I'm not a Buddhist, but I love Kuan Yin, you know, and I love that image. And unfortunately, it's been taken down recently by communist China, who is now starting to zero in on Buddhism, which they didn't do for a long time, but it's happening now.
It's awful.
Yeah, it is awful. So, you know, for me personally, what I would tell you is that it just depends on where you're coming from. Like, if you're happy with Maiden Mother Crone, you don't need a historic reference to that. You don't need you don't have to pick a goddess that validates that for you. You know, it's the moon.
I'm all about that, being born a Cancer on a full moon.
And the moon is older than any of these names.
Yeah, I agree with Brian totally.
Okay.
I think you can work with the concept of, I mean, how many people
You don't even
do
have to
think
call it that. You could
historically,
call it whatever you want to.
Yeah, how many people historically do you
Virgin
think?
Queen
Yeah,
Witch.
Bella Luna.
Yeah,
I just go with
Bella.
Bella Luna.
I
Yeah.
would like to add a general comment about how do we begin to work with something in the world of the occult in general. My practice is if I'm coming across something that I haven't worked with and I don't know a lot about, the first thing I do is read history about the god or the local people or the culture so that I'm developing sort of a historical framework about the god or the topic or goddess. Then I sit with that knowledge and ask that information, that god, that goddess, that symbol to speak to me and unlock the door of itself so that I can understand it better and then lead me to more reading and research. I think it's kind of grounded in some reading, then you're going to do it in your meditation life, and then you're going to go back to some research. It's a really clear way, I think, to open doors in any subject in the occult. That's what it means, hidden, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what I do. Read a little bit from different points of view, then sit with that idea and ask to be shown more. And I say authentically and truthfully by the god or deity, the goddess in this case. Say, show yourself to me. Please let me understand you. I've done some work. I'd like to do more work. Let me know where I need to go next.
Yeah.
And they answer, don't they?
I think so. I mean, I think
so
when you
too.
work with the gods,
so too.
they're a lived reality. I don't think of the gods solely as archetypes. I do
No,
believe
I
in
don't
the
either.
reality of deity. So
I do.
So I just want to let people know, because we don't say it very much, but we don't take anonymous callers, because it just, if you're going to, in case it's a troll, we want to be able to call you back.
yeah. But did we answer your
Well,
question?
I'm not a troll. I'm a good person.
We have another call. We just said we don't take anonymous calls.
Did
and
we-
It just increases the likelihood it's going to be a troll.
Yeah.
Which can be fun, but it's just.
Not always. Did we answer your
Yeah, I tried to.
questions?
Yes, you did. I tried to post something on the chat, but it wouldn't let me post. So I don't know if it's my
strange.
internet or what. But
Well, the reality of
I
it
love
is,
you
it
guys.
just depends on what you're looking for, darling. If it's the goddess and it's the moon, it doesn't have to have a name. It doesn't have to have a label.
Okay.
It doesn't have to have anything.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peggy. Thanks
Thank
for
you
calling
so
in.
much.
Thank
She
you.
cares about whether you're
Thanks so much.
sincere, not what you
Blessed be,
call it.
y'all.
Blessed be.
Thank you. Actually, we have a return caller that we've talked to before. It's Australian Stephen. Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember anyone
Australian
from
Stephen.
Australia named Stephen.
I do. Stephen?
Sorry.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Oh,
Hello. Hi. Is it going?
It's going
going.
well.
Yes, I've never heard this
going.
person before.
yes, we
Yes,
have.
you have.
Yes, we have. I've heard it by watching.
I know. You said in your screening that you had a question, Stephen.
I do. I have two questions.
Okay.
So I will, without dilly-dallying, I'll get onto it. So my first question. Now this is based on an assumption, which feel free to please give me your ideas about as well. But assuming that the gods are a name and a force to which we have no idea really what it actually is, it's something beyond our understanding. So going by that
Oh,
assumption,
we know,
that
Stephen. We know.
So looking at the triple goddess or the goddess herself as being something that is beyond our understanding, I suppose in the idea of invoking her or calling upon her in witchcraft, are you calling upon a name and a face to a force which is a mystery for a purpose of accomplishing a particular task, or is it?
You have to
more
remember, for us, the goddess is the goddess of the entire universe. So all goddesses are her. So she is the supreme feminine force. I mean, that is what our tradition, listen to the words of the Great Mother, who was of old called amongst men. And she has many, many names. So we're not playing sort of a correspondence magical goddess game. We can call on her for whatever reason, and of course she's mysterious, and of course we don't understand everything about her because, well, that's the nature of the divine, right? It's that which we don't understand within ourselves, and the circle of the entire universe. So, really what I would say is that if I'm understanding your question, is that, we're not necessarily invoking them for, like, we don't necessarily work in our magic circles and say, today we're invoking Aphrodite because we're going to do a love spell. You know, that kind of correspondence magic is not really full-on craft. You know, it doesn't mean we're not familiar with it. It doesn't mean we don't ever do it. You know, the way I've described it to people is that, you know, in our religion and in our magics, the goddess is everything. And so she's got all these other aspects, but we're really focusing on that everything. And yes, the primary symbol we see is the moon, but, you know, however, you know, magically speaking, when you are going into like that sort of work where you might be like, okay, well, you know, I'm focusing on Brigid and Hearth and Home. Well, you know, then you do kind of, you've done that with your mind. You're making that thing. So I always bring it back to Neoplatonism. You know, we see it as all being real. You know, you can look at all those little lights of the rainbow and realize that the one true light is so blinding you can't see it without the crystal. You know, and you've got to perceive all the little colors, but you still know that it's all coming from that one light. So maybe I misunderstood the question, but
no, I think what I would add, Stephen, is what I think you're getting at, and Brian did hit on this, is this concept of is it a named face and an intelligence in the universe? And I think yes, but I think we're also going past that, which is what Brian's talking about with the Neoplatonic lens. Is
her name is the first sound upon the black waters of creation.
There you go. It's a little bit more, right? But for me, I think what you're kind of getting at a little bit with this question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen, is the difference almost between thaumaturgy and theurgy, right? Like sometimes the goddess is something I'm doing to raise power within a circle to achieve an end. I'm co-creative with her. Sometimes I am worshiping her and raising the power to experience ecstasy, which is theurgic, right? I'm not doing it simply because I have a spell in mind, but I'm unifying with the divine on some level. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'll let Elie speak as well, but that actually leads into my second question, but yes.
I would just say something brief about it. If I had a very specific working in ritual, like someone died recently and I wanted them to be protected or watched over in their development through the veils to the land of the dead, I might call on Akate to do that for me with that in mind, that she functioned that way in Guardian of the Underworld. Maybe Diana of the Huntress, if I was particularly ambitious about something. But you asked, would we name her and give her a face for a reason? I think if I needed that goddess to do something in one of her powers, I would call on her and visualize that aspect of her. But as Brian says, that's not the first thing we do. The first thing is to connect with the universal goddess head and bring that down into the vision. And
but it does happen, right?
It does happen.
You can't help it. It's human nature.
Humans are specific.
You know, going back to Maiden Mother Crone, if we were going to say, let's say that was our focus, well, for what Elie said, you'd be going to the crone.
Yes.
You know, or if you were trying to have, you know, help with your husband, you might go to the mother. You know, you're trying to seduce a young lover, you
never
go to the
mother for help with your husband.
So what was your second question, Stephen?
Never. That would be the crone, Elie, for you.
So my second question now relates to the idea of what you were talking about, theurgy, and I suppose it's linked to the great work. It's linked to the more deeper aspects of magic and of creation. So the goddess, in light of these things and accomplishing the great work.
What do you mean by the great work?
I'm comparing it to the ritual magic concept of connecting to the higher guardian angel.
Okay.
The highest aspect of the self that is closest to divinity.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
That aspect of us which is closest to the goddess.
The Adam Kadmon.
In relation to that work, and
I just always wonder when people say it if they have any idea what it means.
I'm not
can't
even imagine how to put it.
Oh, tons of times. Oh, the great work. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So
I'm cheeky tonight.
You're tying that to the goddess in what way?
Yeah, so
picking
I suppose
Stephen,
the religion of witchcraft is is the process of the great work, the journey of connecting to your highest aspect of yourself, which is, I suppose, like a mirror image down here of the goddess. Is that sort of the pathway that leads you up on the third path?
I would say that, Stephen, that's at the core of any initiatic religion. I think if throughout history, any religion that believed in initiation with a capital I, from the cults of ancient Greece and Rome to Tantra in the East to witchcraft in the British Isles, and expansion throughout the Commonwealth.
Essentially, the great work
core
is the path of initiation.
Exactly.
It's a Western term. It may have other origins I don't know about, but it's a Western term used in the esoteric occult orders and in witchcraft. But essentially, it is the path of initiation. The deeper spiritual sides to it, are interpreted differently in different traditions. But yes. The answer to your question is yes.
Absolutely.
We are obviously on that path. I'm being a bit naughty because I see that word thrown around by people who don't know what it means. And I had a feeling you had some inkling, but I was having a bit of fun. They don't, they don't know what it means. And quite frankly, it is going to be different. We're going to let you go. It's going to be different in every tradition as far as how you get about it. But it is, if you're talking to someone in the Golden Dawn versus talking to an Alexandrian witch about the great work, they're both going to know what you mean. But our way of going about it is a little bit differently.
I wanted to say, Stephen, that you asked in working ourselves into the great work, how do we identify with goddess? As a female practitioner, my practice or my energetic weaving has more to do with how I relate to the God form. And in that combination, my female archetype combined with the masculine archetype is what I think I need to do to achieve the great work. And maybe for men, that their inner relationship with the female archetype is how they are going to relate to the great work. I think there's a difference
real
in
witches, I mean, this is my experience, and hopefully I'm not letting too much go. But my experience is real witches, initiates, it's the women that are obsessed with the haunted god and the men are obsessed with the goddess.
I do find that to be true.
That is the way that it is.
But
biologically, though, we just can't help it.
And I think
just
Stephen,
think that's the
even if
polarity.
you're
That's
gay,
the polarity.
sexuality is not what it's about.
No,
I think
not what it's
Stephen.
about.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love me some horny god on Saturday night.
I mean, same. But you're throwing around the word theurgy, and so am I. And I think that is a big difference. Because Brian brought this up, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, or the OTO, or lots of other initiatic institutions, right? Witchcraft is particularly, in my opinion, ecstatically religious.
Yes.
And so I do think we are worshiping the goddess in a different way than you would see.
There's crossovers between, obviously, witchcraft and other sects of modern paganism. And there's crossovers between initiatory witchcraft and other kinds of witchcraft, and there's crossovers between our witchcraft and the occult, but it doesn't mean these things are all exactly the same and we're all speaking the exact same language, because things are interpreted through different lenses and practices. But there are some common grounds, of course.
And I also think it's like, for example, I've talked about this with Elie and a few other people. I've been doing a week of really sort of ceremonial workings personally, and Solomonic sort of angelic. And I love it. I love it, but it is not the same thing as working in a circle and worshiping the goddess. That is a whole different experience that I think is lacking sometimes in other magical orders, and what separates craft and makes craft very special and what draws me into it is this ecstatic experience of the Great Mother, which I do think is a little bit lacking, to be honest, in some other occult systems which are so tainted by the patriarchy of Judeo-Christian faith. It's not a bad thing. I like the angel names. I like the god names in Hebrew, Adonai, Elohim.
We get to play.
It's great. But it's not.
Alexandrians love to play with all the magics.
Could I say something as a priestess?
Even God had a wife, though.
Right.
Yes, Ashera.
I work to invoke the goddess into my body.
Even
into
the
my
goddess
being.
had a husband.
Into my body and into my being. I work in ritual to invoke the goddess into my body and into my being. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a more powerful thing I've ever experienced in the world of the occult than doing that work in a circle with my fellow witches and having her show up and use my body and mind to get across her message. You know, it's a really practical, emotional
Elie likes
experience.
it when people use her body and mind.
I like it. She always says brilliant things when she's using me. She's always brilliant.
That's true. Did we answer your questions, Stephen?
Oh, I want to ask
No, you
Stephen
did.
a
No,
question.
that was great.
Oh, Elie wants to ask Stephen a question.
Stephen, when you are working on the great work in your own life, in one sentence, how do you use the god and the goddess in that work?
How do I?
Just
How do
go
I?
with this.
How do you use
How do I
the
what,
god and the
sorry?
goddess in your own work to achieve the great work in one sentence? Because Brian wants it all to be in one sentence.
Doesn't have anything to do with this.
This is going to sound really corny, but connection to the love that is in all things. I don't know how else to word
That's
it.
absolutely
lovely.
correct. I mean,
No,
Elie
that's
said
lovely.
it.
But I get reduced to tears.
Yeah,
All right,
even dark-
Stephen.
Well,
Well,
I
may
feel
you
it.
be fertile in all things. Thank you for calling in.
Blessings. Thank you.
Thank you
No
so
worries.
much. Sorry,
Thank
we're
you so
having a bit of
much.
fun tonight. Tonight was our naughty show because I didn't want to be boring.
Thank you,
That's
Stephen.
okay. I'll continue listening on YouTube.
Keep on the great
Thank
theurgic
you.
work that you're doing.
Thank
Do it.
Blessings.
There's nothing,
No worries.
nothing
Bye.
wrong with this thing. No, I was picking on Stephen a little bit just because I've seen it thrown around recently, and I knew he had a clue, you know, but I've seen it thrown around quite a
Well,
lot.
really, it's a big word, the great work, and you're
Yes,
absolutely
exactly.
right
It's
to
thrown around.
ask for
Are
some
you doing the great
definition
work?
around
Yeah, it's just
this.
like
People
what-
do throw that
what are
out
you
a lot.
talking about?
You
Yes.
will, like, or people who've stated, I've seen it, I've accomplished the great work.
It's not like
I've crossed the
it's not like
abyss.
grilling
Right.
a really fabulous burger, the great work.
See, I
It's
never
like
claim I've
something
crossed the
else.
abyss. I do tell people. Christian got really excited one night. I said, "Oh, I was in the abyss last night," you know, and he's like, he was obsessed with what you mean by that. And I was like, "You'll never know," but I
Never
was
know.
there. I was there at a terrific time. I don't know if I crossed, but I was there.
The abyss. So we do have another. We have 2 calls waiting, actually. I'm going to answer this one real quick.
I've got to pee so bad. I wonder if I can do that.
Hi, Shane.
Shane, welcome to Covendom.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to PG.
I'm good. How are you?
If you really
Doing
need
well.
to, you can duck out.
What was your question, Shane?
All right, so my question was specifically for Elie.
Oh,
because
don't go to the
I'm
bathroom, Elie. Listen to Shane. I'm ready.
Okay, so from a woman's perspective, how do you feel the triple goddess manifests within Alexandrian witchcraft? How do you feel you express those mysteries? And how do you live that in your everyday life?
So, like, as a woman, in
Right,
your
right.
everyday life. Cool.
It really matters to as it is a woman or as it is a man biologically. I appreciate that question. I personally try not to focus too much on body image or age, but more function. And in ritual and in circle, I expect all the women, in fact, there to be embracing the goddess and bringing down her energy in their world as much as they can express it. And it doesn't really, you'll notice this in ritual, it doesn't necessarily matter age or longevity in the craft. Energies will show up in different women in a ritual that's perfect for their expression at that time. So I think the important thing to do is let it happen through you. Sometimes I'm a younger representative. Sometimes I'm an older representative. Sometimes I have different messages from different parts of the goddess. Is to not be critical, allow it to happen, and offer yourself in terms of the ritual as a vessel. And then in my personal life, I think it's being non-judgmental. To be honest, every person that comes to me, every person I talk to, all my interactions, I try to more embody the totality of the female archetype, not just based on quality or age, but that eternal accessibility and be non-judgmental and accepting of all who come towards me for whatever reason. And I found that really helpful in my life just to get rid of stress. Just look at things from the eternal goddess point of view, and it's not a big problem. Nothing's really a big problem after
Everything does
that.
seem a little smaller.
So, but I do appreciate that I experience it in ritual strongly, and then in my outer life, more as a single archetype of just the female wisdom and knowledge. Blessings. Thank you.
Blessed be. That was beautiful.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
So I let that one pass because Elie deserved a question. Part of the reason we brought her on the show is because every season we've tried to change things up, and this is a bit of a difficult show to do because there's only so many topics that you can cover. Though, we seem to be doing all right, and some of them I think we could recover again. But Ellie's grown so much in the craft, and she could do it. My priestess before couldn't have done the show, or I would have asked her to co-host instead of Levi. But she was just too busy with her travel and things like that. She wouldn't have been able to do it. So Levi got stuck in the mud, and such was born. But when Elie coming up, I said, "Do you want to do it?" And she said, "Oh."
I said I'd be honored.
So I suppose
I
I will. So it's great to get her perspective. That was the reason why, really, is that when we started this show, there were very few BTW shows going on. And I've actually, I don't want to toot our horn, but there's lots of duplicate shows now. And it's mostly done by two gay guys. So I was like, now we got to add a lady. We're the trendsetters. Now we got to add a lady. So we were the first two gay guys.
And now we have.
And now we got so many.
A trinity.
Yeah. So I wanted to add a lady. So I'm so happy to. And Ellie's also just, more fun than Levi. So
it's true.
I have a lot to say, but I agree fully that this combination is
normally
nice
we prefer you ask a question we all get to answer because we don't want to do that. But anyway, that was fine. I thought you deserved it.
You can answer too, sweetheart.
What was the question? No, I
when
couldn't.
You
that was
the
actually
goddess. No, right?
That
he
question
can't do that.
was directly for
You're
you.
exactly right. He can't
so
do that.
he actually had a very valid reason for saying.
And that's important that Levi nor Brian can be the goddess in ritual in Alexandrian witchcraft. They cannot.
I cannot be.
They
cannot be the triple full goddess.
They don't.
No.
They don't. And we could imagine we have the body parts. We could want the body parts.
You could have them sewn on, but they are not the body parts. No, I mean that's
and
an
this
important.
is how this all goes downhill.
I've had a button for that. Hold on, wait. Let me find another one to stop this from happening. Anything but this.
She's not wrong.
These things must be done delicately.
Delicately. So I did want to go back because there were a couple questions in the chat. I'm not addressing.
She did it for once instead of me.
She did. So Singing Goat Tarot further back in the comments asked, do you think this idea of a complex triple goddess in craft might be a response to the male-centric monotheism that we're trying to avoid?
Well, the old myth was, and this is the old myth in modern craft or modern whatever we want to call it, was that, and I've heard it 1,000 times, I'm sure these guys and some of you have too, this may be only people of a certain generation may have heard this, but there's this old story that St. Patrick taught the Trinity in Ireland through a shamrock. And that it was, and that he was stealing it from the older goddess thing. There were Trinity goddesses in Ireland, absolutely. There were Trinity goddesses in Ireland, but I don't think this is actually based on any reality. I think it was just something somebody said that caught on. The fact is, there's been Trinities most Trinities were parents and child. That's most Trinities. And you get that, all throughout Egypt. It's usually, we get that in Leland's. It was, Diana, Lucifer, and Herodia. So most Trinities are parents and a child, but some Trinities are all one deity. So this comes back to, it's just a cultural application. Our perspective, however, is what's craft. What is craft? Now I've forgotten the question.
And what's Hegelian?
What was the original
thesis?
question?
Do you think it's a response to monotheism, to the male simplicity?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think it is in the sense that it doesn't have an historical basis, because it absolutely does. But one of the things I say about witchcraft is that witchcraft is not a pre-Christian religion. Witchcraft isn't even a pre-Christian word. Modern English was developed within Christianity. Old English was exposed to Christianity and possibly developed within Christianity.
Yeah.
So these are not pre-Christian words, and they're, not that we are anti-Christianity in our vehicle, but we certainly do sort of have that rebellious fringe on society sort of thing.
I do.
And the goddess, for me, is the biggest rebellion you could possibly have, in a sense.
Agreed.
So, yes, I think in a way, but I also think that the Catholics got it from us. I don't think the Catholics got it from Ireland, though. I think the Catholics got it from Egypt. Alexandria was extremely influential in modern Christianity. It influenced the Orthodox Church, and it influenced the Catholic Church. Like, if you want to study church development, that was a major city.
Yes, it was.
And it had a huge thing. And before that, Rome itself and Greece itself was greatly influenced by Egypt. So the Greeks and the Romans had already embraced the pagan triads of Egypt, and so I think the trinities in the mystery cults come from Egypt.
Yeah, you get
now the
Cerberus,
trinities
Isis,
to the Celts and that sort of thing, maybe not. We've got no proof one way or the other, and so we must decide it probably came up in a different way. In witchcraft, however, the reason it became a conversation, it was about the moon. I don't remember it being a big thing early on. It was the maiden is the waxing moon, the mother is the full moon, and the crone is the waning moon. No huge thing.
And
no
maybe ideas
statues
about the fates
it.
or the charities or the norms.
Yeah, people later on started doing
different
that.
Individuals.
Nowadays when I talked about the triple full goddess, even in my book, it's like, she's not always made mother crone. Sometimes she was like brigand. She was healer, poet, and warrior.
Yes,
celestial,
or healer, poet, and smith.
Infernal.
So it's not, the aspects change, but the idea is what that's really teaching us is that it's Neoplatonism in its most basic. That God can have more than one aspect. Mm-hmm. That God can be seen in different ways. And female. Whether it's a male or a female God, it can be seen in different ways. We believe
or
that
positive
anyway.
And negative.
One of the things I love to say to upset people is that I'm a monotheist. And it's not to upset them just for the sake of upsetting them, but it's because they don't understand what the hell I'm talking about. And it does work, and it offends them, and it makes them think. And it's not untrue, because in the end of the day, I believe in God. I believe in goddess. I believe in the creative force of the universe, and I first see it manifesting through the dim eye urges of God and goddess, or goddesses.
And we say there's a God that's one.
But I believe in their many emanations.
But not that there's only one God. And also in Catholicism, there is not a Trinity for Mary, right? There just isn't anywhere. Is that
There's some weird thing I came across that I did reference in my book, and I just don't remember it. It's called the Three Marys.
It's Mary, the mother of Christ, Mary, Magdalene, and then Mary. There's a third Mary.
I can't remember what the third Mary is.
But it's not worshipped in the same way.
No. But it did exist, though. There was a reference.
To your point about the monotheistic,
So we do have a call. Hi, is this Brian?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
It's not coming through. No, that's not what it is.
I'm trying to see if I can hear you.
Brian, we're getting a connection. Will you try calling back, please?
Can you hear me now? I was on speaker.
Yes.
Hello, Devil Brian.
Hello, Mr. Cain. Hi, Ellie.
I know
Hi,
that
Levi.
voice.
Yes, we do.
I don't know this person. I don't know anything yet.
It's been a while.
Brian.
Ellie's new.
Okay, so we have to. Can I explain who Devil Brian is? I don't now remember how I met you. I've never met him
in the
physically.
woods.
Yeah, we met in the woods. Probably was in dreams. We're probably.
I knew of. I was acquainted with Christian prior. I'm not sure if we. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that too.
No, we never met, as far as I know. But I don't
right,
remember how.
of
But
course.
anyway,
But we met
Brian
online.
Is he's leans a bit towards the witchcraft devil kind of thing. But he's got a greater.
Come on, I had to.
Delicious.
I had a button.
So
also,
we need to.
Might I add?
To the devil
I love your
goddess.
button of the Wicked Witch of the West. It's my favorite.
I do.
Anyway, so what are your questions, Brian?
So this question is in regard to the God Pan, and I recall many years, well, a few years back, back in the days when I was referring to myself as pagan and, just starting out and just new and fresh.
We all did that.
I remember reading somewhere, and I can't recall, that's not important, but what is what I was reading about in regards to the dying God. And it was something about how a God has to die for another God to be born, and there was something I was reading about Pan had to die for Jesus to be born.
Oh, yes. There's an old myth,
I read,
and Levi will be able to paraphrase it better than I can.
Or something of that nature.
Sorry, I lost
Yeah.
you. There's an old myth, and actually there's a band called Waterboys. Waterboys even has a song about it, about Pan dying. So there's this old myth, and Levi might remember this, or Elie might remember the actual source, that there was somebody traveling on the sea, and they heard a thing saying the great god Pan had died, and it was supposed to symbolize the final death of the old gods, so that Jesus could become. I mean, it's a weird thing. But there's a look it up right when you get off of here, when you're done with the show. It's called The Waterboys, and it's a song called Pan, and it's all about that. It's a great song. But yes, I mean, do I believe that? No. I think
so. It was
Jesus
more like they were throwing shade
Jesus
in a way.
Jesus is just a sad Jewish Horus. That's all he is.
I will say this: there is a lot of mythology.
Sorry, Jesus lovers. I love Horus too.
There is a lot of mythology.
Horus, Jesus,
about sort of the death of the final pagan. I lived in Brittany in France, and there's the myth of the city of Ys, which was the last city of the Druids. It was the last Druid king.
Oh.
And the devil attacks the city, and the saint who Christianized Brittany fights him off, and the city sinks like Atlantis, never to be born again, and the last Druid dies with it. And with the death of the last Druid is the conquering of the Christian
myth,
faith,
probably.
Right?
Yeah, that's probably a Christian myth.
Yeah, there's a lot of those in Western Europe.
I'm trying to look at this.
Gotcha. So pretty much they're saying the false god had to die for the true God to be born.
You should know that.
Yes.
Pan is really super strong.
Devil or God, to me.
To bring it back to the topic of the show, though, the last pagan deity that the church was actually afraid of was not Pan, it was Diana. She was called Diana Dea Paganorum. Yeah. She was the last goddess of the pagans still worshipped by the people according to the church. It was a woman.
The church in Rome, most certainly, absolutely. Yeah,
they were.
And do you think that has something to do with how women were treated within Christianity and looked at back in the day?
Like, This is my crazy thing, everyone, and this is not based purely on fact. This is based on my idea of things. All right. So there's a bit of crazy on here. I don't say it too much publicly. So I believe, without sending you down the happy trail of every reason I believe it, I believe that the monotheistic cult of Isis degraded, with the rise of Christianity. And I believe that her last incarnation was a new cult, which was the cult of Diana. And I think that was a reincarnation of all the cults. I think the cult of Diana had a bit of Isis. Well, I think she'd become Isis. I think she'd become Hecate, and I think she'd absorb Dionysus. Yeah. And I think that was the last stand of mystery cults. I think it's an unrecorded mystery cult, but I think it was the last known mystery cult to the church. And even if it wasn't factually a real thing, the church believed it was. So even if it was just an idea, the church believed it was real.
Well, look at Roman Etruscan Remains by Charles Godfrey Leland, published in 1899, all through Etruscan Italy.
Do I necessarily think it was like really widespread?
Was all those myths of Diana?
Probably not. It was probably a relatively small cult, if you were going to give it in comparison. But the idea that has an impact to this day.
Yeah. Up until 1899, the common folk were still talking about Diana. More than Jesus. Okay, I really got to pee. I got to go. I'll be right back. Ask one more question for the boys.
Did we answer your main one, though, Brian?
You did, and thank you all for that.
Of course.
I just wasn't sure if it was part of a mythology that is kind of world like that is known by many, but it seems that it only comes from Christianity, and I wasn't aware.
But no, look up that Waterboy song.
It does come from Christianity. The concept of the last death of the old gods.
So Waterboys, the great god Pan. It's a great song.
There's another one you can look up if you want about the temptation of St. Anthony in the desert, Brian, where he meets a centaur and a satyr. And the satyr says, the pagans used to worship me as a false god, but even I know that there's only one God, and it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or whatever. And then St. Anthony uses that in Egypt to preach the gospel by saying that even I found a satyr, and even he has admitted the truth of Christ. And that is actually recorded in the legends of St. Anthony and the birth of monasticism. So that also has a tie to Pan because it is a satyr in the story.
So Water Boy, Great God
Water
Pan,
Boys
and what
the
is
name of the band?
what
And I
is-
think the name of the song is The Great God Pan. I think that's the name of the song. They have 2 songs about Pan, but it's about that myth. You know, a sailor heard overhead, the great God Pan was dead, you know, but here he's still dancing with me. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah,
it's a good song. I love it. But no.
And what
I
did you
think that's
say,
just another
Levi?
example.
Was it a song or?
No, it's a legend. The legend of the
It's a
temptation
legend,
of
but this
St.
song
Anthony.
is referencing that legend that you're talking about.
Yeah, the legend of the temptation of St. Anthony talks about the satyr, the last satyr who admits that the truth of Christ has triumphed or whatever.
I mean, I do know that I have read that the last actual pagan temple historically known to be closed was actually in Egypt. And the reason why is because it was the Temple of Philae.
In the classical world.
Yeah, in the classical world.
Not in the rest of Europe.
Yeah.
The last pagans were the Baltic and the Slavic people.
Well,
Yeah.
they still existed, really, honestly.
Yeah, the pagans in the Slavic world stayed pagan
No,
until
I'm
the
talking
12th
about.
century.
I'm not talking about those kinds of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll narrow that down for you guys all. So when we're talking about anything, we're talking about Western civilization.
They were the last, though, like Lithuania.
No, you're right.
They were the
Actually, no,
last.
there's actually areas
Romania?
there's areas that are
Yeah.
still
Russian.
that still are pagan in that sense of the word.
They kept the old folklore.
In that outdated word. I think we call them pre-Christian peoples now. They're not. We don't actually call them pagans anymore in academia. You should know
Yes,
that.
but thank you again for calling, Devil Brian.
Did you have another question? Yeah. He doesn't give people 2 questions.
No, thank you guys so much. I wrote both of those down, so it's gonna be my
Thanks
homework
for
when I get
calling
off the phone.
in. Love hearing from you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Good
The
night.
best place you can find Satan is through the goddess Diana. Just telling you.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
What is it? Was it Dion Fortune that said she went to?
In the Winged Bull, there's a line where Dion Fortune says, "Do you not know the great secret that when they went to kiss the ass of the devil, they found the face of Isis?"
Yes, it's true. It's all true.
That it was the goddess was the real secret. That you thought it was the devil, but it was really a woman.
I think that they're symbiotic. Is the real secret.
Symbiotic.
But
Beautiful
yes,
word.
however you're going to look at it.
Beautiful.
Moo. So Elie,
Yes.
in the triple full goddess, in your experience, how much is it really relevant to you in your craft? That phrasing.
Not a lot.
Now that's the thing. It's not really this big important thing.
20%. You know, it's more through the year that we're focusing on
But it's the moon, really,
story,
right? Yeah.
the story of the god and the
To
goddess.
me, it's just
But
the moon, honestly.
I'm not really thinking about it, to be honest.
No, the goddess is the goddess. The goddess
is a
God.
huge being that we're trying to bring in and deal with, and
Not like Gardnerian
She doesn't
huge.
divide herself.
She's
up
not
like that. To me, she
Gardnerian
doesn't.
huge, everyone. She's very well shaped. You know, so she's not huge like a Gardnerian.
We're not doing this.
And also, age is human, not God form. You know,
Levi,
gods
what's the
aren't.
difference between-
No, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this.
Have another cherry.
I'm not doing
All
this.
this stuff in my sound went really down.
I'm turning his mic off.
You don't either, Brian. We're not experiencing it. As a
Not that we
faithful
don't love
times.
our Gardnerian kin, we just don't understand how those little altars work as seats. It's just-
Anyway, I banish this. Exercise this horrid conversation.
Wait.
Which one are you looking
You
for?
don't even exist to
That's
me.
my whole thing tonight.
That's your whole thing tonight.
So anyway, so the triple full goddess. Let's see, Levi.
Brian?
If you were going to pick a favourite of the triple full goddess, would it be maiden, mother, or crone?
I mean, they're all...
I mean, you gotta pick one.
If I have to pick one, absolutely the mother.
I was gonna say Mama.
The mother.
Yeah.
Like the concept of the regal, enthroned, the prince is mine, it can never be taken away from me, you know what I mean? That dominant energy.
You too?
Mother.
Because she's powerful.
As much as I don't want to say that, but yes.
The mother is a symbol of such power because, like, at one point, I think of in history of like dowager queens or
Steve's
queens
asking
who
what
ruled
are
for
our
their
favorite
son.
triple goddesses. Actually, that's a good question. I'll
But
answer.
subservient to the mother also.
My
Like, you can't really
favorite
talk
triple goddesses. Well, I mean, our goddess, the goddess of the moon. So, but one of my favorite ones is actually one that I discovered quite recently, and it's a bit theory, but they are pretty certain that it's true. It's a discovery they made in Neme, Italy. And most people don't know that Neme was probably a throne seat for. This is the thing. There's like these really magical places in Italy that are really sacred to the goddess Diana that were really crossed over with the goddess Isis towards the end of Rome. Mm-hmm. Towards the end of Rome, the cult of the goddess Isis, towards the end of Roman paganism, the cult of the goddess Isis was a big deal, as far as goddesses were concerned. And so she didn't quite go quietly into the night. But in the places that Diana had ruled for hundreds, if not longer, years, Isis had become to merge with her, and there was a bit of a transformation going on. So Neme had been one of those wonderful places where you have this lake, you've got the Mirror of Diana, you've got all of this like forest. She literally was Diana of the forest. She wasn't like quite a virgin like the way she was in Rome. She was the goddess of the people of Neme. Like, that's just the way it was, and that was her. She was the moon, that was the mirror, blah, 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 it was all there. And you could tell that even when she was an older icon, that was all still there. That lake is ancient, and it's perfectly round, and on the summer solstice, the full moon hits the middle of it, and it's just a very iconic thing. But towards the end, Caligula had brought in the cult of Isis there. So they found a trinity of Diana, Isis, and Hecate. And it was a tree-formed statue, and they're very sure that's who it was representing. The last one was Hecate. Yeah. But I thought it was really cool. I loved that idea, the mixing of those things. But, in that sense, Diana can be, Diana's always represented as the Virgin, except in later witchcraft stuff. The mythology that we're talking about with her possibly being like a medieval mystery cult. Mm-hmm. What are you doing, Elie? You're stealing my... Ellie's just like ripping stuff off of me. So, then she's no longer a virgin. Then she's the mother of Aradia. She's the lover of her brother, which is very Egyptian. If you study Leland's stuff, all of a sudden you've got this new Diana who's associated with wine, which is nothing to do with the old Diana. She's associated with her brother Apollo, but Apollo's all of a sudden called Lucifer, and there's this Christian connotation going on there. Yeah. But she has sex with him, and in order to seduce him, she turns into a cat, which is a very Egyptian, especially late Isis stuff. Early Isis Egyptian stuff, you wouldn't have her turning into a cat, but by the time she later Rome, she was all of the things. So it's a very Egyptian sort of thing to turn into a cat and have sex with your brother.
Right?
And then form a divine trinity.
Late stage Egypt. Yeah. Things got weird.
Yeah, Roman Egypt.
Era.
It wasn't actually Egyptian, it was Roman.
Yeah, things got
That's
very
the whole
weird.
thing. The end of the Roman the last paganism of Europe was dominated by mystery cults, except in the extreme regions. That's just the reality of our modern history that no one talks about. At the late stage, the end of paganism to Christianity was not tribes of nomadic Celts. It was not tribes of nomadic Germans.
Use of temples.
It was Romanized, conquered peoples, and a mixture of faiths, and many of them had gone along with it. Like, it wasn't, people think when Rome left Britain, it was somehow like all the Britons were cheering. No, they weren't. If you study history, no, it was an invitation for slaughter and barbarism, and it's exactly what happened. So it's imagine your world that all of a sudden, 400 years later, it'd be different if someone came and conquered you and 50 years later got driven out. But after they'd been there for 400 years, you were them and they were you. Yeah. The Celts of those regions of Britain were Romans. They weren't Celts. Right. They might have identified with that. They might have sort of hated certain things about it in some regions, but it was the regions like northern, like Sweden and Finland and Ireland and Scotland and, those places that were very on the fringe that didn't get conquered by Rome, but they were still trading with them and trading religious ideas with them. So when Christianity came to rise to power, the world was completely Romanized in its thought. And the Romans were conquered by Isis and Greek mythologies and things like that. So they weren't pure Romans anymore either. And then what happened next? We were re-Romanized by the Catholic Church. So even then, I think the Catholic Church had adopted a lot of Greek ideas, Egyptian ideas, Roman ideas into the formation of their Christianity.
Think about this idea that the god or goddess of place, the genus loci, the well or the mountain or the stream or whatever, is going to be identified with a particular deity, no matter who is walking through or marching through or controlling that particular place. And you'll
like
find...
Jan of Naaman.
That's right.
Yes,
you'll find
absolutely.
in history identification with a god form in a place through a certain time period, then it switches whoever's controlling the politics of it. They say the same thing about the place.
The most famous example of this is the church.
They just turn their name into their god.
The best example of this is the Church of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome. Santa Maria Maggiore means blessed or holy Saint Mary the Great.
Lucy,
Maria
everything.
Maggiore.
You're still Roman.
Right?
Yeah.
We are all still Roman. That's the funny thing.
So, Maria Maggiore, literally that church in Rome, one of the most important churches in Rome actually, is built on the ruins of the Temple of Magna Mater. Literally, Great Mother. Yeah. Magna Mater Maria Maggiore. I mean, it's just...
all of Western civilization is Romanized. There's just no escaping that cycle.
Or Hellenized deeply too.
Well, we call it Hellenized, but that happened first, right? The Romans were, I have this fun saying that, Rome conquered Cleopatra. They conquered Egypt.
Yep.
And then ISIS conquered Rome.
Well,
so
Rome never
really
got
won?
to New Orleans because if it had the roads
would be better. The roads would be
so
much
They do
better.
say the Romans weren't really great at inventing things. They were better at fixing them.
I'm pretty sure, Lucy, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure she's quoting The Life of Brian. The movie.
I don't know.
The movie.
What have the Romans ever done?
What have the Romans ever done for us? I'm pretty sure that's what's happening here. Yeah, no, I thought so, Lucy. Was what have the Romans ever done for us except for everything?
Our leader.
And then they list all the things the Romans did. Yeah.
Well, the reality of the situation is, boom, everyone take a drink.
I have Diet Coke. I will not toast with Diet Coke as a sin.
Oh no, Mr. Brian needs more.
So anyway, how much time do we have? I haven't picked the section for next week. I think next week we would do, I don't know if I'm going to call it this, but I thought Saints and Sinners, the Ethics of the Craft.
Oh my God.
Love that.
Would be very fun.
What do you want us to research? What do you want us to research?
For
Brian?
that one, you should just know it. You're a priestess.
What about ethics, Elie? Don't come with notes for that one.
Am I going to come with the sinner side of this conglomeration?
I know exactly how this conversation's going to go.
Probably not, really. It'd be probably Levi. Everyone thinks that Levi's the good one and I'm the naughty one.
I am the good one.
But in reality, I'm actually quite modest and holy. Humble. And Levi is very corrupt and demonic.
None of this is true. I am the most rigid.
Like if anyone was going to have a sex slavery ring, it would be Levi.
It would never be me. I am the most prudish person, outside of the bounds of my private, glorious life.
Will have a sex ring with the
We're getting
Levi,
vulgar here. This has all gotten too weird for me.
Elie and Levi be doing that. Very humble. I'm very humble.
What have we not covered on the triple goddess?
I think honestly.
I felt like I said the things I researched.
Oh, somebody asked us what our favorite triple goddesses are, and I was the only one that answered.
Yes, so Elie, who is your favorite? That's a good thing to end with, too.
To be honest, I really don't use them, but what I'm going to start with is the Diana, because I had not read about Diana, the triple-fold goddesses, the huntress, the goddess of the moon, and the goddess of the underworld, and I'm going to start looking at that a little bit more and see if I can identify with that.
Isn't there? Diana,
Hera, Diana.
So, whenever you come across new ideas in witchcraft and the occult, you want to read about it. Like I'll say again, you want to read as much history and academic information as you can. I think that's important. then you want to sit with that material in your own lodge, your own temple, or your own meditation space and ask to see more about it. And I'm going to certainly ask to see more about it.
Is this the confession booth?
No, we're not confessing any sins. I like that answer, though. I'm going to answer the question, I think, in a way that people might not like, which is my favorite triple goddess. Well, I mean, honestly, the one that speaks to my soul the most is Kabbalistic. The concept of the supreme Godhead, Keter, splitting into Chokhmah and Bina, which is our God and goddess, the demiurgic forces of creation.
Yes. But at the same time, Chokhmah and Bina are also the goddess.
Exactly, because the goddess is everything. So that's what I do, is I see the goddess as a totality, then also split in creation as both the receptive and the dominant, or as the negative and the positive, or as the magnetic and the
because
the electrical.
Keter is the creation, Bina is the black waters, and in a sense, Chokhmah is the song.
Yeah, and the light, you know what I mean?
Which is
the fire of creation.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So I think
the
honestly,
one spoke.
Yes.
Those supernals are kind of what's in my head a lot when I'm in deep religious
and
practice.
awesome for the great work, because you're really trying to get past the abyss into the supernal thinking.
To do the great work, you have to do something great.
That's true. You have to cross.
Let's think about that for next week, though, really quickly. Maybe we could add back in the Kabbalistic Sephira and their goddess.
I think the great work needs to remain a bit of a
God
mystery.
In the philosophy of the Sephira.
I think the thing with Kabbalah that's very interesting is I teach a little bit on Kabbalah sometimes, and I teach Hermetic Kabbalah, which stems from people, predominantly from people like Johannes Reuchlin.
That's right.
In the beginning, and then eventually people like Dion Fortune and Aleister Crowley. However, traditional Jewish Kabbalah is not a fan of this. Gershom Scholem, who's my favorite Kabbalistic scholar, despised Eliphas Levi and Aleister Crowley. He said terrible things about them, basically that they did not know what they were doing.
How have you handled your journey as a witch with, that sort of pressure?
Pressure for being what?
No, from your
for being Jewish. That's the running joke in the circles that I'm Jewish. I'm not. I'm a Gentile, but I have a deep love.
Well, it's not actually. His mother wasn't Jewish.
He has
I have no Jews in my bloodline, but I have
the
a
most beautiful skin.
Deep
Levi does.
love of Jewish
Those are
mysticism.
some Mideastern eyes.
Deep
I
love.
haven't seen them ever.
It's really the bedrock of Western occultism.
I really do.
Really, it's Jewish, Egyptian, and
British.
What are you, Celtic? What are you?
I'm not Jewish.
I don't say Celtic.
My entire family bloodline is from the British Isles.
Atlantean.
My
mother's maiden name is Conley.
Atlantean. That's what it is.
Rowland and Conley. You don't get more Britain and Ireland than that.
But I'm saying my families are all Scottish and Welsh. So it's
I think we're all the three of us are actually all predominantly British.
Yes,
really,
we're all.
But yeah, that's my
light
favorite.
Light skin, light eyes, light
That is my favorite triplicity. Is the supernals.
We don't have light hair. I dye mine. Shut up.
You know what, Brian? We all had to post our first.
But he doesn't have light hair.
We had to post our first selfie on Facebook in our last.
And
Brian had blonde hair and blue eyes, and I'm like, what the hell?
I really don't understand. I have hazel eyes.
too.
Actually, they're hazel green.
We are
sometimes they're
one
hazel
of the
blue.
1% of humans on Earth with light green eyes.
Mine are green.
Is that really a true thing?
It's true. Green.
Actually, our eye color is very similar.
We have strayed so far from the Blessed Mother.
I never realized that before.
And we're one of 1%, Brian, you and I.
It's been a great evening, guys. Over here.
Levi, you're not in our tribe. You don't have light green eyes.
Green eyes. I literally do.
The girl with green eyes. Actually, your eyes are the same as ours.
This is a whole thing that's happening.
Oh my God, we all have the same eyes.
Okay.
We just discovered this.
Wait, before we leave, tell us again next week's show.
Yes.
I have literally spent how many years with you people, and I didn't know this?
We're close together right
now.
Usually we're in the dark, right?
Maybe a case of narcissism on my part.
Usually we're in candlelight.
Anyway.
No, your eyes sometimes are darker looking than
They're
that.
very green. My eyes are very green. Here's
yours
the
are
thing.
a bit greener than ours, but they are very similar. Really.
We're gonna go soon.
I
have lost.
It's like we're related.
This train has left the track slightly.
So we're the Trinity, girl with green eyes. All right. So anyway, next week's episode is going to be on. I'm going to make it fun and call it Saints and Sinners, the ethics of the craft. But we are going to we've kind of reached on this a little bit, and it may sound boring, but we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. So
we're going to make you all understand ethics.
Ethics are okay. It's great to have them.
Alexandrian ethics.
Big fan of ethics, actually.
Ethics and integrity can almost go hand in hand. It's amazing. Yeah.
I'm so glad you all joined us. Next time we'll be talking about ethics. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. It's been wonderful. We will see you next time.
If you have any further questions, you
Call
can
back. We
put
love
them
you
in the
guys.
comments and we'll
Keep
get to them
talking
later.
to us. Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a great evening.